I don't recall hearing about that guy before.
Yeah. He was around forever. He was back in my dad's day. And he remembered he did my dad's listening friends. And he said, oh yeah, Bobby Dad, oh yeah, we'll do that. My dad used to have a common place with my dad too. So, yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Welcome. It is just after 7. I have 7:01. So welcome to the Village of Webster Board meeting for August 26, 2021. If you would stand with me to say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, seated. The first item we have tonight is again public comment, and at this particular time we'll open up the floor to any comments or questions to the village board. And it appears as if there are none. So we will move then to our scheduled agenda and business for the evening. First item on our agenda is a resolution to approve the minutes from the July 29th, 2021 meeting. Look them over. You have no additions. I would accept the motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, we have a resolution to approve the claims and warrants. We have that as our agenda item 2. There's actually quite a list of them.
Well, we use a lot of pens, don't we?
Because that's because I think we missed the last meeting. So
Yeah.
51.
carried over. I have a feeling that some of them tend to walk off when people sign things at the front office.
So we should invest in a 10 roll of string and tie it.
Seriously.
Or the chains or whatever
Yeah.
that they have.
It was just $17, wasn't it?
No, there's two.
Where?
32, 37.
Yeah.
It's $50-something for pens. Not that it's a lot of money.
Jakester likes nice pens.
I do know Grant makes some good pens.
I wonder how much more it is to put Village of Webster on the pen, so at least there's recognition. They take it with them.
I don't think they care.
That's what I'm at the bank at Grant.
Recognition, you know, but
$50 isn't a lot if we haven't done it, and, it's also
Right.
about the amount of times you do it. If it's
Yeah,
less
they
than,
order pens.
if you haven't ordered pens in actually you a year or more, it's pretty good.
Do we,
They walk so much with passports that you have to order.
finally,
Same day.
clothing, do we buy underwear too? Is that, we've got socks, belts,
Yep,
birches,
anything they need.
underwear?
Yep.
That's nice. Nice, wish I could do.
Hey, you were in the negotiations.
Not for underwear, that's not what the.
It's long underwear.
It's not essential, is it?
Well, we're gonna
Essential
tell-
items, right? T-shirts
That's
and
not the
underwear.
language in the contract, we went over this before. It specifically sets forth the items of clothing, and underwear aren't included.
Thank you.
In
Or
our
T-shirts.
T-shirts are,
It's long, it's
if, assuming they're those glow, big
Glow.
ones.
Yeah.
long ones.
So they're using this as
Yeah.
outdoor underwear, long underwear for when you're shoveling and plowing and.
Um,
correct.
So it's not like you're
Do
getting
you see the list of things?
Hubert,
Turn them in. Do you see
SpongeBob
the
boxers.
No, no, we talked, after the last couple meetings ago, we talked about getting together and having perhaps a different procedure. Or even better yet, saying that we went back and forth and determined that $600 was a fair amount for a clothing allowance, and then saying, here's $600, here's what you have to have for work. If you don't have it, you go home without being able to use your personal time until you have it, and then forget all this, us ordering things here and doing all that, just saying, hey, here's the 600, this is what you're expected to have, and it has to be serviceable, and you have to have these items, and then if they spend $600 on pizza and then don't have any money to buy gloves, they're gonna spend other money for gloves, but ultimately they're gonna have to wear gloves when they get here, or they're gonna have to have safety boots on, and then we don't have to approve or not approve any individual item. We just approve the amount, basically saying, hey, that's what was agreed upon in the union contract is a fair amount to cover these specific, the stuff that you're gonna need for work, and then take the specifics out of it. Because, I don't know.
Well, I remember that one of the items at one point a few months ago was like a cooler. That was an item that was brought up, and I questioned that as part of what they did.
Well, and the earbuds.
Yeah.
That you can listen to music in, and when it's supposed to be, you know, ear protection,
Yeah.
the ear plugs. The contract says ear plugs, but they're getting earbuds that they can put into their phone and listen to stuff with. You know, it's,
No. That's not.
Well, yeah, some of them have, I know one of them, not all their vehicles, some of them are still a little old. Most of them now have Bluetooth stuff, but not everybody's phone is connected to them, so if they're driving, they might have a bud in their ear, in one ear, so they can drive and they can still talk.
Jane,
You know, have a hands-free thing. No,
sorry.
and turn it off because it was going.
I know, it is like your funny sound.
So, but, no, whatever, I mean,
Well,
obviously, it's in the contract, there'd be a change or something if you wanted to do something different with it anyway, but the original idea was to have is a company in Buffalo that said that they could do, like a whole, almost like when you buy something for your kid's sports team, you know, your kid's on a sports team, you get on a website, say, you get this jersey, or you get this, or you get that, they have something set up like that, but then they never, they didn't follow through with what they said they could do. So that was at the time we were doing the contract, and that's when the language got in there, and they kind of carried through. So now it's kind of just a piecemeal, safety equipment, it's clothing allowance, so it's, and but the concept is specifically in the contract, what it says it could be used for.
Sacks. Yeah, all nice sacks.
Well,
theoretically, so it's work clothing. So it's stuff that's, theoretically, it should be things that are used exclusively for their employment with the Village of Webster. You know, who knows the long underwear? They're going to be wearing it to Bristol Mountain skiing over the winter.
Mhm.
And they're the earbuds. They're not just using those during work. You know, so it's,
So just have to hang their underwear up on a hook in the office.
Yeah.
Can't go home with it.
Right next to their earbuds.
so, I don't know, it seems to me either whoever's approving this stuff needs to be a little less liberal in their interpretation of what is work clothing, or just change the contract, give them $600, and here's the list of things you are expected to be
You are
wearing
required.
while you're working here, and you have to get them now. And, but the present thing, and again, there's been all these emails about, we want consistency in things. Well, I'm not so sure that's very consistent from employee to employee. Certain employees are getting some stuff, other employees are getting different stuff. It's, and then you get petty jealousies. How come you got that and I didn't get this? Just give them the $600. I like that idea.
It's not a terrible idea, it's just now we when we say that and they don't have what they're supposed to have and their money's gone, who's gonna make sure there's repercussions? Because if we let it go, it doesn't no good, we just change the contract.
Whoever their supervisor is.
So that's, the other thing. If they don't have safety boots and their money's gone, technically they can't be here working without their safety.
Right.
So it just puts more on Jake to make sure that.
Well, it was his idea, so it's like.
It was okay. I mean, because right now, it's, you know, someone's ordering something, I honestly never see the stuff until it shows up and it's very often it's on a bill pay. Because I don't have an Amazon Prime or whatever, it's pretty old, so I don't do that stuff. So somebody else does the Amazon Prime things, and that's where a lot of this stuff will go through, and then it comes off the thing, because we're still holding the funds. It's similar to if somebody goes and travels on per diem, you're allowed, here's a per diem rate, you're allowed $28 per meal. But that puts you guys in a position, if that person wants to spend $28 on surf and turf, you're in a position now you have to approve surf and turf, where I would rather have, here's $28. I don't care if you have ramen noodles or if you have surf and turf. Here's $28, that's what it says. Because I would much rather just say you're approved for $28 per meal than ever approve surf and turf, because how do you justify that? I mean, that's what you guys in a bad spot, I think. I haven't that much
That's pressure
detail.
on you too then.
Oh, that's,
So you can get surf and turf for $20, that's not.
Yeah, I
it might not be very good at the gas
Yeah, you should
station.
be promoting because they're genius.
You're not supposed to get surf and turf at the gas station?
You get Robbie back for let's get Robbie back. We would have a contract. I like that idea, yeah.
Yeah, well, first,
Run it by John first to see
Yeah.
if he's okay with it before you start bringing in,
Yeah.
you know, the negotiator. Because if John's agreeable to it, you know, he could probably drop it.
It's definitely easier for us too with ordering purposes. We don't have to make sure that it was approved, but that's easier.
You know, and this board is in a bad position because, like you said, this stuff's already here. They already have it. So what if you don't approve it, you know what you do? Take it back from, try to get it back from them and return it. You know, by the time it gets to this bill pay thing, it's all
They've already worn it
They've
3
already-
times.
They've already got it, exactly.
And plus we spend an extra $40 on processing the bill, writing up the bill pay, including in there, making the payments.
Yeah.
And,
Seriously.
no, I agree, good point. All right,
Yeah, and just come up
Nice.
with
Anything else under anything you want to say?
No.
And don't get everything when everything you just see it.
So you can't get your capital fund all you go through. You want to pay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, everything, something like that, so it's just everything.
It's just something else that they take care of. We can stop that.
Anything else?
What did we return to Crown Electric?
We got some material, there was one of our storm lines over in Clover, and we got the estimated material and got a bunch of material, so we didn't have to run back and forth 12 times, and then at the end, we just returned everything that wasn't.
Oh,
Was it
okay.
stuff?
Okay, it was storm, yeah.
Yeah, if that's, I think that, I don't have the bill in front of me, but I remember seeing that one in there, there was a bunch of return. I thought we went to birds on here, I see birds.
I did think so.
That one I was up.
that's a good visit at Burke's, $3,100 bucks,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, exactly.
They also said the burgers are good.
Huh?
They also said the burgers are good.
They are.
That's where he is right now, having a burger.
Heather, I got a question. New York State Conference of Mayors. It was 934. Were those dues or what for the
It's for.
Nikon?
Nikon.
I know.
It's for Joe and Marcia to go to Nikon.
Okay,
Oh, it was Joe and Marcia.
Yep.
I know, but it shows up. It shows up some particular one time. Which actually is coming up soon, September. Okay, If you have no other questions, I'm waiting a moment. As you go through. If you don't have any other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Right.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, we have a resolution to authorize a temporary easement with Sandbar Associates, that's down on Lake Road, 41 Lake Road. That is probably really with Mayor, but under Sandbar Associates. A motion to approve.
I'll make that
I'll
motion.
second.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, we move on to number 4.
If I can, there's a 3
Yeah.
and a half in there. There's also, look for a resolution, I forgot to get this to Heather as well, but the agreement between the Village of Webster and Sandbar Associates regarding the decommissioning of the Sandbar wells, demolition of the well houses, and granting of a temporary easement. So that's one where we say, hey, we need all these things, and here's the condition you wanted in, and ultimately at the end, they'll get the right of first refusal for the parcels for the cost that, was it Rin
Murphy.
Murphy did the appraisals back in the fall. So that one would also need a resolution to approve, or for the mayor to sign that.
We are getting close to being removed from the Sandbar obligations down there. So I'll ask for an authorization for me to sign that document.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Thank you. Aye.
Motion passes.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Jake.
Number 4 is a resolution to determine that the Village of Webster wastewater treatment plant improvements are a type 2 action under seeker. The village board of the Village of Webster is developing plans to repair and replace its wastewater treatment plant infrastructure and equipment that are deteriorating, outdated, or inadequate in order to meet the requirements of the State Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, commonly known as the SPEEDIES permit. So I'm looking for authorization for a resolution to, I guess, just simply determine that these improvements are type 2 action.
I'll make that motion.
I'll give you authorization.
I'll second that authorization.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I guess at some point, maybe now, coming up here in number 4, maybe I'll talk a little bit more in the secret or in the type 2 determination. Resolution to adopt and amend to adopt the amended and restated bond resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster, Monroe County, New York, known as the Village, amending and restating in its entirety a bond resolution of the Village dated October 10th, 2019, relating to improvements to be undertaken to the Village's wastewater treatment plant, estimating that the total cost thereof is $10,900,000. Appropriating said amount therefore and authorizing the issuance of up to $10,900,000 in serial bonds of the village to finance said appropriation.
I'll make a motion to.
And I'd like to continue on and read this. The resolution entitled, the amended and restated bond resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Webster, Monroe County, relating to improvements to be undertaken to the village's wastewater treatment plant and estimating the cost of $10,900,000. The resolution authorized the issuance of serial bonds of the village to certain improvements to the village's wastewater treatment facility as described in the technical memorandum. And the period of probable usefulness is 40 years. That is the usefulness of these things which are going to be paid for and which are listed in this bond. The amount of debt obligation authorized is up to $10,900,000. If you remember, we also have in there a Type 2 funding, which a WIA 2, I guess I'd call it that, which is $1,400,000, and that would reduce this down by that amount to 9.5, and then we would need for additionally a 600,000 issuance for the treatment as we move forward with our own wastewater treatment plant. So that would basically take it down $2 million from this cost. Okay, so looking for a motion to adopt this amended and restated bond resolution.
I'll make that motion to adopt the amended and restated.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy? Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I think you should just note that the resolution is subject to special referendum, which can be filed within 30 days.
That referendum is something that would be done only if a permissive referendum was requested, and if there are a particular number of signatures that would be needed for it, or just needed for it to pass. I believe I've read that there's something to the order of.
Well, it's a permissive referendum. It's under the section 9-902 of the New York Village Law, and that governs permissive referendums. And so, if someone wants, you have to get a petition to ask for the referendum. That's what is called a permissive referendum. And the village clerk is supposed to have the petitions available for anybody if they want to come in. And then they got to get 20% of the signatures of the qualified electors of the village as shown on the village's register of electors for the last general village election. And so then if a petition is filed and it has the requisite number of signatures, then what the bond resolution itself is put up to a vote. Electors.
Thank you for that clarification for those out there who may have an interest. All right, moving on to item number 6. This is a resolution to appoint the village clerk as human resource director. I believe that what we have here is basically a listing of it's a resolution of the Village of Webster Board of Trustees to appoint a human resource officer or director. And what we have is a list of items that are here that would fall underneath the functions of the human resource director, including but not limited to the following items that are listed here. It is proposed that the human resource officer be the village clerk, as this pertains very much. That would be whereas the Village of Webster Board of Trustees intends to designate Heather Halstead in her capacity as village clerk as its human resource director. There's an enumeration of the items here that are listed as those that would fall underneath the heading of human resources. I think we had previously, at least in concept, designated Heather as a human resource officer, but this delineates and explains, itemizes those things which would fall under the purview or at least be identified under the human resource title.
So are we changing other policies that are in conflict with this?
Pardon?
Are we going to change other policies that are in conflict with this?
Should there be some that are in conflict? I don't know. Don has had an opportunity to look it over, but I don't know.
Yeah, number 14 involves any discussions pertaining to light duty or transitional duty requests for documentation purposes and proper record keeping. We discussed at the last meeting that in our two policies is the responsibility of determining if light duty assignments are available is the responsibility of the direct supervisor, the immediate supervisor, of the person making the request.
I don't believe that it is something where there would be, what do you call, input in terms of what would be going on. It's simply part of that discussion, so she would be, or the human resource officer would be aware of those discussions.
It says it's for documentation purposes and proper record keeping. Not that the HR director is going to participate in the decision whether or not to grant light duty and what exactly that light duty will entail, unless it's an employee directly under the supervision of the clerk. But
Maybe good to clarify.
Yeah, so all you gotta do is remove the word discussions, and then she's keeping all the records and documentation, which is typical of HR anyway. So it's typical in any large organization or organization that the professional leading the department would be able to dictate whether someone can work light duty or not. Because an HR person's not going to know
Right.
what workload you have. But HR will document the paperwork, make sure it's always fair to every single person, those kind of things.
So, Jake, in terms of the wording of that, involved with any discussions, it would be, are you questioning the term involved with, or simply a part of, I'm not quite sure how to put that, but in terms of documenting purposes and proper recording, the HR would be a part of, that would be a part of, so I don't know how to phrase that.
Yeah,
Different than that, that's the meaning that we're going to proceed with, but I don't know how.
I honestly honestly, I was out last week and I never saw any of this, and I guess it doesn't have anything that pertain to me. At the last meeting we had, there was a discussion about having a further discussion on this at the time to ensure that there was the requisite skills are compatible with the requirements of the position. It seems like it's cart before the horse a little bit, but again, it doesn't pertain to me. So, whatever, I just never saw her, I would have, I guess, shared, well, I guess I would have shared opinions once asked, so, carry on, I guess.
There you go.
That's not my recollection of what actually transpired at that board workshop. I thought, because I proposed to the board, that they needed to take a resolution to officially appoint an HR director, and I thought the direction was, go ahead and put together such a motion or such a resolution.
Right, I think I asked for job functions or job description. You can't put someone in a position and it's just loose. So what are your functions?
Well, it's listed in here.
Right. Yes. I mean, this is a very small number of functions for an HR person, so I would assume number 15 includes other duties or special projects. It could include many other things. But that's what I think we were asking for, is more clarity on what that role would be.
Thank you for writing that, and I would ask for a motion to approve the appointment of a human resource officer, and that person would be Heather Halstead, a village clerk, who would then become human resource officer.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Polito?
Aye.
Trustee Lancy? Mayor Beckers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next we have financial statements. We're just starting the year. It looks like we're doing very well. I'm not spending a whole lot of money yet, but in terms of percent used, which is great. Yeah.
Except for those frisky pens.
Except for pens. I asked the question, landscape maintenance, economic assistance, and publicity personnel. We're in 102% of that. That encompasses what things? Primarily landscape maintenance?
There's a lot of yes, water, and I'd have to look exactly how that's broken down.
What line is that?
This landscape maintenance would be a
64, 10, 100.
Thank you.
That's where watering, weeding, they combined some things recently. We used to have mowing in different spots, and they kind of got combined in there. And sometimes there's a parks line as well, 7140 it should be.
Yeah.
There was a 100 line in there, that's 133. So there might be where there's parks mowing. Sometimes you go mow different areas. Before it was like you mow the buildings, and you go mow the parks. One person's mowing, you gotta put, hey, I mowed today, and put down where to mow, and all goes on at once. And technically, the park should be, at the end of the year, they adjust the 100. So park should be on the parks line, and the building should be on the other landscape maintenance line, and then the streets, and the economic assistance line, so. But I don't know.
question, Jake, and I probably know this. The 100 lines for sewer, specifically the ferric chloride, sodium methyl chloride polymer, as well as the sludge hauling in the landfill. They seem to be at 100% used already.
Yeah, that includes encumbered funds, so when they, at the beginning of the year, they'll do a PO for the amount, just to kind of say, hey, this is what we're going to
And
need.
then I know you went on and subtract as it's done.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a little confusing because it says year-to-date actual, $9,352. I assume that's actually what's been spent. Under the sludge hauling, right?
Oh, so
But then you've got outstanding encumbrances, the $50,647, which is, that must be like last year's money that wasn't spent.
No, there's something. They did a PO, so they did a PO for 50 or for 60,000. They had, like you said, that adds up to, no, that adds up to 60. So they did a PO for the whole 60,000. And then so far they've drawn down, they've had draws against that PO for totally $9,300. So there's a $50,000 balance in that purchase order.
Jake, I'm sorry, could you just?
So then there'll be subsequent drawdowns as
Yeah.
months go by. Any other? Any other questions? Ask. Still there? No? Okay, then we'll move on. Beginning the year. All right, finally we have a budget modification, and this pertains to the sewer fund budget. And that is from GG, .1990.400, the contingency fund, $12,600, to be used under GG .8130.452 for pump repairs, $12,600. This was to fund the emergency pumping tube at the town STP. What did that pertain to? I'll ask.
We have a, down at the town sewage treatment plant, there's a additional trickling filter. That trickling filter has 2 pumps on it. About a year and a half ago, I was approached by the deputy commissioner about getting a motor for, if they were going to get a motor and for one of those pumps to be able to circulate. That's in our wet well that's down there, so you can circulate it. But the trickling filter itself hasn't moved in years. So we thought more about it and said, well, ultimately what we want to do is ensure that there's a backup system if something happens in our plant, so we can pump it and make sure that it can go somewhere and get treated. So we had discussions, and it came up with the idea of putting a tube in, kind of a hard pipe. It's basically building like a standpipe almost, or a reverse standpipe, where we have a suction tube that's there, so in the event of an emergency, or if we have an issue or even a plant shutdown, we can go get a pump there and then transfer, hook up, it'd be a large pump, a 12-inch pump that we'd have to rent. And in the meantime, we could get a small R pump to keep things moving or get things going, then get a 12-inch pump that would take all of our flow and send it over to the head of their plant, or just right after grit removal, depending on the process at our plant that was not working, just in that unlikely event. So that's what this pipe is, and it's the ductile iron pipe, and this guy went about 13 feet long. So I go down, it's going to have a quick connect on it, so we'll just be able to pull a pump up there, hook up the hose, stretch the other one out to where it's going, and turn it on. And it's got different elevations, going to be preset into a program that they can do. So it'll turn on at a certain height, maintain here, and then shut off down here so we don't run it dry.
Good thinking.
Okay. Now, let me ask a question. that is going to be in place now as an emergency, in case our plant were to go down or something were to malfunction. Would that continue? Would that then be used in 3 years when we go online with our own discharge, speedies permit, et cetera?
I would expect that it would, you know, if we have something like that.
Emergency?
If we have something like that in place, I would expect to keep it there, because it would, you know, it's nice. Ultimately, we want to protect the environment. That's why we're both doing it. So if we had that thing in place, I would assume that we never have to use it. But it would be nice if there was an issue that we had that in place, so that we could take it and give it a second chance of treating something before it reaches the environment.
So that should be something that we'll have to remember for an meeting with the town. Include.
Well, that's going to be something that's already constructed, it's going to just stay there, so I think it's going to be done. I don't know if there's going to be any more, other than, you know, maybe they'll, you know, include in there, if need be, that, you know, the village will have an emergency number, we can contact, which we do, and get somebody down there to let us in with the pump. You know, if we needed something at all hours, you know, 24/7, so.
Okay.
Good.
Well, it should be included in the new IMA. And I was going to mention this when you got to attorney, but since this sort of led into it anyhow, the mayor and I have had discussions that sooner rather than later we need to enter into a new IMA with the town, given that there's going to be separate sewage treatment permits. And so I talked to Jake, and this was like the day before he was going on vacation, or actually it might have been one of his first days on vacation. So the first step is for Jake and myself to get together and come up with a list of topics and things that have to go into the IMA, you know, from our end. And then I'll pass that on to, you know, start the negotiations with Charlie Genesi and or the supervisor or something. So Jake, we got to put that on our to-do list.
These are my meeting to-do list, I didn't get on there.
Then he was on vacation, so we haven't had a chance yet to
Sort of.
meet about it.
We were sort of on vacation, so he was still in multiple times.
And we finally got smart when I
Yes,
can't.
you did.
Trying to find areas with no cell coverage,
So I don't know, I think maybe we need a resolution, a motion to approve this transfer of funds.
I'll second.
Trustee Polito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Lindsay?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Don, I hope I didn't steal your thunder totally, but we go to you.
No, well, that was all I was going to, just for the other trustees, I know, like I said, the mayor and I had talked about doing this IMA, and I just wanted to include in the other three that while it is not a requirement for the financial package for funding from the Environmental Services Corp, it is a requirement for the DEC and the speedies permit. They want it, because one thing that's got to be in there is an explicit acknowledgement that the village has a right to use the outfall pipe that's shared with the town. Right now, there is no document that expressly provides that. It's implied in a lot of places, but the DEC, the village, we'd all be more comfortable having it expressly set forth, and that's something that the DEC wants. They want to know that the village always can use their pipe. If you're going to get a discharge permit, it's got to go somewhere.
And the implication, I think, was there because we were responsible and now responsible for 1/3 of the cost of that.
Yeah.
Right. Why would the village pay a third of it if it didn't think it could use it?
But there needs to be something for it.
You know? Right. So that'll be one of the main components of that.
Anything from the clerk, though?
We'll come up with our list and we'll run it by everybody in case you guys come up with other things that we didn't think about or whatever. You know, and I'll put something together to present to the town.
Good.
Heather, anything?
No, thank you.
Jake?
It's hot. It's hot, it's hot, it's hot.
So you've been away for a week, you must have a lot of...
Yeah. There's a lot going on. I actually made a list this morning. We talked about the sandbar thing. We're working on agreements with stormwater stuff. I'm actually learning how much Will did. I feel bad for picking on him as much as I did. Because there's a lot of stuff, especially stormwater things that he just quietly got done. And so but we're picking up on that. We've got the updated part of that engineering report, the technical memorandum for that update. So things are going along, and we're just looking for help. And we should have a discussion at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, regards to seasonal. I want to advertise for seasonal, or maybe we even could now start advertising, but. You know, for leaf season in the wintertime, it's increasingly difficult, and you're finding it everywhere. And minimum wage is $12.50. I think we're typically $12.50 to $13, and that's tough when Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's and stuff are starting at 15. And that I don't think I'm suggesting 15, but maybe 14, 14.50. It's tough though, because that's a lot of money when you're taking a chance sometimes on somebody. So,
Yeah, that's true.
But that's what the market. You really just need to find somebody that likes this kind of work. It's not just after the money, but people need to eat too. So, but typically the seasonal is going to be college age people. Obviously, you can't have them skip a class or 8 leaves with us, but. I haven't talked to anybody into that so far anyway, so.
But I think everybody, CVS, everything you talk to, every restaurant you talk to, no one can get it.
You can't get that.
They just simply can't.
Yeah, it's trickles down to everything we're trying to do. We talked about that science not too long ago. People don't have help, they can't do those things. We've got a street light that somebody hit, I think it was in March. We still haven't got the new pole in yet. The new pole in the street lights because they can't get it from the factory. Our supplier can't get it from the factory because they can't get the parts they need to make the thing, I guess. So
It's universal.
One of the things I would add to that, Jake, is that in terms of hiring the seasonal, I think that there really needs to be in place a definite endpoint. We have a start point, but I'd like to see a definite endpoint. And if we do need to have an extension, we could do that. In other words, I'd not like to see it open-ended. But if we have, help coming in, there needs to be, I think it's important to be an endpoint.
We had a very good luck with seasonals until just a few years ago. There was a strong push by board members that are no longer here that we wanted to be adamant that we didn't get into a situation where someone gets unemployment. Ultimately, if somebody works here for 2 hours, they can collect unemployment if you look at the rules. Having an endpoint. Sometimes, certainly I think there's got to be an endpoint if it's a seasonal or a temporary one, but sometimes having an endpoint, we have an individual now that just went back to college and wants to come back and work 11 hours or 12 hours a week, and it's like, no, we need somebody 40. We can't have somebody 12. So he would be eligible for unemployment because we have a job available for him. He can't meet the requirements of the job, which are to be here for 40 hours. So that sometimes, I think, obviously we want to protect the village and be fair with everybody. But if we have a job that needs somebody here 40 hours, we can't just, it's not, you set your own hours, it's,
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. Well, we'll ask HR.
Well, I don't have a problem with an extension. It's just the open-endedness. I don't know if I agree with it.
Yeah.
In other words, if they were here for a summer employment and it was, started in May and ended in September, if they were to continue on or you needed them and you were available, continue on, I see no reason why we couldn't then simply say, we're hiring this individual from, it ended September 10th, we're hiring them from September 11th through whatever. It's just that really, I don't know about leaving it open-ended, I kind of have a reservation about that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think there's challenges both ways. I mean, sometimes, ultimately, I think Don can answer this, I'm sure they're at-will employees, I believe. But if you have an end date, it's almost like, hey, you said you're going to have me for this period of time, or if it's like, hey, you're here a couple weeks and it's not working out really good, we don't have you for that period of time. I mean, it's, I don't know what's,
Well, you started out by, you characterize the employment as seasonal or temporary. Now, I don't know which it is. Is it seasonal? If it's seasonal, I can see Daryl's point. Well, what's the season? Leaves, October 1 or September 15 through when snow plowing is done, April 1st or something. And then, or is it temporary? Well, if it's temporary, is it really temporary, or you wanted somebody for 40 hours? That's a full-time job. That's not even a part-time employee. You got to give them all benefits. How can you have somebody?
So it's got
How can you have
seasonal would
somebody
be a
that's
better
seasonal
word.
working 40 hours a week?
well, because they work during the season.
Yeah,
The other
seasonal
guys
is
who
better.
work seasonally for 6
Temporary is
Well,
not.
if you're,
This is terminology that was here when I started.
were you paying this person, were they getting all the benefits of the,
No, they're
but
not
they're working
hired.
season?
I
But
think,
you're working them 40 hours a week.
I think a lot of seasonals would go back to school when they're done. So, and to Jake's point, I did ask him about that, and about that point, just trying to run some ideas.
So what is the rule for that? So if you're working 40 hours, you're considered a full-time employee and should be eligible for what a full-time employee.
There are stipulations in there though where you're not if it's seasonal. Because, so he is correct on that.
Then you should have the end date, like Daryl suggested, because now you know it's really seasonal.
But that,
There's an end date.
yeah, but with the current climate, it's
Well,
just, everybody's going from home.
So you do what Daryl says, it could be extended. Otherwise, again,
That is what I said.
perhaps the HR director is going to have to look into this, but I don't see how you have somebody working full-time, yet just because you're calling them seasonal, but they're not really seasonal, because you want them here 365 days a year, and now you're not paying them any benefits, whereas everybody else, if you're part-time, you don't have to pay benefits,
Right.
right? But this person, it's not a part-time employee. I thought way back when, that these kind of employees were part-time. And that's why the village wasn't giving them any
Part-time, it wouldn't be 40 hours.
It's 38 hours.
It's got to be under 32.
Right, it's 30 or 32.
Yeah, 32 is still full-time, so it's
Yeah.
you might.
So, that's how to get around paying them.
Can you get back to us on the correct verbiage?
32 hours.
I did ask civil service
You're there,
about
have
it,
them work for
and
you.
they said that a seasonal person can be let go at any time.
Yeah.
Right, but it's the 40-hour thing that I'm concerned about.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
didn't find out. And unfortunately, they use both terms, and they're not interchangeable. So there is a temporary, because I have to put it in for civil service through their system. I have to put anybody we have into their system, especially if they're in New York State retirement or whatever. So, and there's definitely a difference between seasonal and temporary, but I'll find out. Temporary though, I don't think that's the one we want.
I don't know, I was hired by a way long time ago, so rules obviously may have changed, but I was hired by the county lifeguarding in the summer, and I think that was probably called seasonal,
Yeah.
but yet I was then hired also by, through Manpower, working out at Lawyers Co-op. That was temporary, pretty sure, not seasonal, because as long as they needed a person there, it was temporarily filled, but.
That was through an agency. You weren't working for Lawyers Co-op, you were working for the agency.
And the agency is a temp agency.
You were working for the agency.
Yeah, right. 'Cause
You
they
were
took
not
a part
working
of
for
the
Lawyers.
salary from whatever.
You were not working for Lawyers Co-op, you were working for the agency
Right, at Lawyers Co-op.
at Lawyers Co-op, but
I will say
That's
that neither one of
different.
these
That was
entities
still temporary,
were even close to 40 hours, so.
so that's the issue.
They were like 10, 20, and that was even,
the post office uses the term casual employees. And
So we have a.
what that entails legally, I have no idea.
So what's the definition of a casual employee?
Well, at the post office, an employee can only be casual for 12 weeks. If they want to keep you, they slap a different title on your job and keep you another 12 weeks.
Did you hear his definition of casual employee?
Al is the definition.
He's not here to defend.
Casual.
No, it's not, so it's not money, it's not here. He can listen.
do you want me to do the flex order?
Anything else? Our next village board meeting, our next workshop, actually it's a workshop.
Do we have an agenda for that?
I believe that it will be coming out, correct?
It's already posted and it just has the appraisals on it. Employee appraisals.
Things that can be added to it, I think that there will be.
I'm sure we'll beat that conversation.
That was August 31st, Tuesday, and then our first board meeting, next board meeting will be in September. I believe that's September 9th. I believe, it's September 9th. I'll give one notification to the public. The serial bond interest and principal payment for bond obtained in 2012 will be made in the amount of $86,593.75 on September 14th. So, I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you.
We have no other items, and I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make it. I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Approved.
It's good. Good meeting. Good to see you.
You too, sir.
Nice seeing you, Jay.